Question: DS. Is absolute value of whole of x plus 5 greater than absolute value of whole of x minus 1? Condition 1. X is greater than negative 2. Condition 2. X is less than 1. Solution. Let's solve this DS question using the variable approach. For this question, we need to remember the seventh frequent case where absolute values are the same as squares. There are areas where the absolute values can be taken as squares. Absolute value of whole of a times b equals absolute value of a times absolute value of b. Absolute value of whole of a over b equals absolute value of a over absolute value of b. And a squared equals absolute value of whole of a squared equals absolute value of whole of a times a equals absolute value of a times absolute value of a equals square of absolute value of a. Let's apply the three steps suggested previously. Follow the first step of the variable approach by modifying and rechecking the original condition and the question. There are two possible methods to solve this problem. If you become familiar with both of them, they will be easier to apply when writing the exam. First method. Let's modify whether absolute value of whole of x plus 5 is greater than absolute value of whole of x minus 1 to whether absolute value of whole of x minus negative 5 is greater than absolute value of whole of x minus 1. This basically means that we have to find whether the distance between x and negative 5 is more than the distance between x and 1. 3 is between negative 5 and x equals negative 2. 3 is between x equals negative 2 and 1. Now, the midpoint between negative 5 and 1 is negative 2, so the question modified is whether x is greater than negative 2. Thus, according to condition 1, x is greater than negative 2, which we are looking for. So it will be closer to 1 than negative 5, and our answer is yes. So the answer is unique, yes, and condition 1 is sufficient by the common mistake type 1, which means that the answer must be in terms of a unique yes or no. Second method. Using the cases where absolute values are the same as squares, we can modify the question, which is absolute value of whole of x plus 5 is greater than absolute value of whole of x minus 1. Then, square of absolute value of whole of x plus 5 is greater than square of absolute value of whole of x minus 1. Square of whole of x plus 5 is greater than square of whole of x minus 1. Foiling out both sides, we get x squared plus 10 times x plus 25 is greater than x squared minus 2 times x plus 1. We can cancel out x squared on the both sides, and then 10 times x plus 25 is greater than negative 2 times x plus 1, which rearranges to get 10 times x plus 2 times x is greater than 1 minus 25, or 12 times x is greater than negative 24. So, x is greater than negative 24 over 12 becomes x is greater than negative 2, and the question becomes, is x greater than negative 2? So, the answer is unique, yes, and condition 1 is sufficient by the common mistake type 1, which means that the answer must be in terms of a unique yes or no. Condition 2 tells us that x is less than 1. Two cases. If x equals negative 1, then negative 1 is greater than negative 2, and the answer is yes. But if x equals negative 3, then negative 3 is less than negative 2, and the answer is no. The answer is not unique, yes and no, so the condition is not sufficient by the common mistake type 1, which means that you get both yes and no as the answer. It is not sufficient. Condition 1 alone is sufficient, so A is the correct answer. Answer A.